The door slid open with the soft whisper that marked all entrances on Kepler Research Station, and Dr. Elena Vasquez didn't bother looking up from her holographic displays. Another maintenance check, probably, or maybe someone from the night shift looking for spare equipment. The station's corridors all looked identical after midnight, and people got lost more often than anyone cared to admit. Rooms occupied, she called out without turning around, her attention focused on the complex genetic sequences floating in three-dimensional glory around her workspace. Storage is 2 doors down on the left. The footsteps behind her stopped abruptly, and Elena found herself waiting for the mumbled apology and retreating sounds that usually followed such interruptions. Instead, she heard what sounded like a sharp intake of breath, followed by absolute silence. "Hello?" she said, finally turning in her chair to address whoever had wandered into her private lab. The woman standing in her doorway was definitely not human. She stood nearly 6 feet tall, with the distinctive pale silver skin and elegant bone structure that marked her as Valerian. Her dark hair was pulled back in the severe military style that Elena had seen in cultural briefings, and her uniform bore the insignia of the Valerian Defense Corps. But it was her crystalline temple markings that caught Elena's attention. The semi-transparent formations that served as emotional indicators for her species were cycling rapidly through colors Elena had never seen in any xenobiology textbook. The Valerian woman started, then stopped, her pale eyes fixed on Elena with an intensity that made her suddenly self-conscious about her wrinkled lab coat and the fact that she hadn't brushed her hair since yesterday. "You're not supposed to be here," the woman continued, her voice carrying the slight harmonic undertone that made Valerian speech sound like distant music. "Actually, this is my lab," Elena replied, gesturing around the space filled with research equipment and holographic displays. "Room 847-C, assigned to Dr. Elena Vasquez for xenobiology research. I'm guessing you're looking for the storage facility?" The Valorian's crystalline markings shifted to deep purples and blues that Elena's training told her indicated confusion mixed with something else, something her textbooks hadn't covered. The woman took a step into the room, her movements carrying the fluid grace that came from years of military training. "You're Dr. Vasquez?" she asked, her pale eyes scanning the research displays with obvious professional interest. "The xenogeneticist who's been requesting access to Valerian biological data." Elena felt her stomach drop. The research requests had been submitted through proper diplomatic channels, but she'd been waiting for approval for months. Having a Valerian military officer discover her unauthorized preliminary analysis probably wasn't going to help her case. "Officer," Elena prompted, hoping the woman would identify herself. "Lieutenant Commander Zaralyn Thex," came the reply, along with a formal nod that somehow managed to convey both military courtesy and personal interest. "I'm conducting routine security inspections of research facilities with classified material access. And you just happened to pick my lab at." Elena glanced at her chronometer, 0247 hours. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Commander Thex's features, and her crystalline markings shifted to warmer tones. "Your research schedule indicates you work extensively during night shifts. I thought it would be more efficient to conduct the inspection when the facility wasn't occupied." "But it is occupied," Elena pointed out. "Yes," Zaralyn replied quietly, "it is." They stared at each other for a moment that stretched longer than professionally appropriate. Elena found herself cataloging details about the Valerian woman, the way her uniform fit her athletic frame, the precise way she moved, the fact that her crystalline markings seemed to be settling into colors that Elena's electromagnetic sensitivity was somehow able to interpret as warmth and curiosity. Wait. Elena's electromagnetic sensitivity had never worked on alien biology before. "Commander," she said carefully, "are you feeling all right? Your temple markings are." She trailed off, not sure how to explain that she could somehow sense the emotional content of crystalline formations that should be completely alien to human perception. Zaralyn's hand moved unconsciously to touch her left temple, her fingers tracing the warm glow of her markings. "They're unusual," she admitted. "I'm experiencing some difficulty with emotional regulation since entering this room." Elena stood up slowly, her scientific curiosity overriding her concern about unauthorized research and middle-of-the-night security inspections. What kind of difficulty? Enhanced sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, Zara Lynn replied, her voice taking on the clipped tone that suggested she was working to maintain professional composure. Increased awareness of bioelectric signatures in my immediate vicinity. And... She paused, her crystalline markings shifting to deeper, more complex colors, an unusual resonance pattern that I've never experienced before. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Resonance with what? With you, Zara Lynn said simply, her pale eyes meeting Elena's with a directness that made the air in the room seem to thicken. I can sense your bioelectric field from across the room. It's compatible with my own in ways that our species' literature suggests should be impossible. Elena's scientific mind immediately began running through possibilities. Quantum field interactions, electromagnetic resonance patterns, the theoretical frameworks for interspecies consciousness compatibility that she'd been researching for years. But underneath the analytical thinking was something more immediate and unsettling. She could sense Zara Lynn's bioelectric field too, and it felt like finding a piece of herself that she hadn't known was missing. This is... Elena started. Unprecedented, Zara Lynn finished. Dr. Vasquez, I think we need to discuss what's happening here. Elena looked around her lab, at the unauthorized genetic research, the late-night isolation, the growing awareness that something fundamental had just changed between her and this alien woman she'd met 3 minutes ago. I think, she said slowly, you're absolutely right. But maybe not here, and maybe not now. This room seems to be amplifying whatever this is. Zara Lynn nodded, her crystalline markings now glowing with steady, warm colors that Elena somehow knew indicated agreement and anticipation. Tomorrow evening. There's a neutral observation deck on level 7 that's usually unoccupied during shift changes. It's a date, Elena said, then immediately realized the implications of her word choice. I mean, it's an appointment. A professional consultation. About electromagnetic compatibility and things. Zara Lynn's smile was small but genuine. Of course, Dr. Vasquez. Professional consultation. As the Valerian woman prepared to leave, she paused at the doorway and looked back at Elena. For what it's worth, I don't think you entered the wrong room. I think perhaps I entered exactly the right one. After she left, Elena stood alone in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays and research equipment, trying to process what had just happened. The electromagnetic sensitivity that had made her an outcast in human academic circles had somehow created a connection with an alien woman that defied everything both species understood about biology and consciousness. She had a feeling that tomorrow's professional consultation was going to be anything but professional. The observation deck on level 7 offered a spectacular view of the Kepler system's twin stars, their binary dance creating patterns of light that shifted from gold to amber across the station's transparent aluminum viewports. Elena arrived early, ostensibly to review research notes but mostly because she'd been unable to concentrate on anything else since her encounter with Commander Thex. Dr. Vasquez. Zara Lynn's voice carried the same harmonic undertones that had haunted Elena's thoughts for the past 24 hours. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Elena turned to find the Valerian woman approaching in civilian clothing rather than her military uniform, flowing fabrics in deep blues and silvers that complemented her pale skin and made her crystalline markings more prominent. The informal dress somehow made her seem more approachable while simultaneously more beautiful. Please, call me Elena, she said, gesturing to the seating area she'd claimed near the largest viewport. And thank you for being discreet about my research. I know the genetic analysis wasn't technically authorized. Zara Lynn settled gracefully onto the cushioned bench, maintaining the careful distance that suggested she was as uncertain about their connection as Elena was. Your research was impressive, she said. The genetic modeling techniques you've developed could revolutionize interspecies medicine. That's not something that should be restricted by bureaucratic delays. Elena felt a flush of professional pride that was complicated by personal pleasure at the compliment. You understood the technical aspects. I have advanced degrees in bioelectric field theory and consciousness studies, Zaralyn replied, her crystalline markings shifting to warm golds that Elena was beginning to recognize as intellectual excitement. Among Valorians, scientific education is considered as important as military training. We believe that understanding the universe makes us better warriors. That's actually a very enlightened approach, Elena said, surprised. Human academic institutions tend to create artificial divisions between scientific and practical applications. Which may explain why your electromagnetic sensitivity has been treated as an aberration rather than an advantage, Zaralyn observed. Among my people, such gifts are considered sacred. Elena blinked in surprise. Gifts? Elena, my sensitivity has made me a pariah in human research circles. I can't work in most laboratories because my presence interferes with sensitive equipment. Most of my colleagues think I'm either delusional or practicing some form of pseudoscience. Zaralyn's markings shifted to deeper, more complex colors that Elena somehow interpreted as indignation on her behalf. That's remarkably short-sighted of them. Your ability to sense bioelectric fields directly has obvious applications for biological research, medical diagnostics, and consciousness studies. You really think it's useful? Elena asked, then felt foolish for seeking validation from someone she'd known for less than 2 days. I think, Zaralyn said carefully, that your sensitivity is what allowed us to connect yesterday evening. The resonance I experienced, that we both experienced, requires a level of bioelectric awareness that most beings don't possess. Elena leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding personal awkwardness. About that resonance, have you experienced anything like it before? Never, Zaralyn replied immediately. Though there are legends among my people about such connections. Kethmara, we call it, the bonding of compatible consciousness frequencies that transcends normal social and physical boundaries. Legends? Elena prompted. Zaralyn's markings shifted to softer colors that Elena was learning to read as nostalgia mixed with longing. Stories told to children about warriors who found perfect compatibility with another being. Someone whose thoughts, emotions, and bioelectric signature harmonized so completely with their own that they became stronger together than either could be alone. And this Kethmara, it's supposed to be permanent? According to the legends, yes. Once the connection forms and stabilizes, it becomes a fundamental part of both beings' consciousness. They remain linked across any distance, can share thoughts and emotions, and their combined abilities exceed what either could achieve independently. Elena felt her pulse quicken. That sounds like quantum consciousness entanglement, a theoretical framework I've been researching for years. The idea that consciousness itself operates on quantum levels and can form stable connections between compatible neural systems. Your research into consciousness entanglement. Zaralyn said slowly, is that why you requested access to Valerian genetic data? Partially, Elena admitted. Valerian bioelectric field generation is far more sophisticated than human neural activity. I hypothesize that your species might provide insights into how consciousness could theoretically transcend individual brain structures. And now you're experiencing those insights firsthand, Zaralyn observed, her markings now glowing with steady, warm light that Elena found oddly comforting. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the twin stars complete another phase of their endless dance. Elena found herself acutely aware of Zaralyn's presence beside her, not just visually, but as a kind of electromagnetic warmth that seemed to resonate with her own nervous system. Zaralyn, she said finally, what happens if this connection continues to develop? I mean, practically speaking, in terms of our careers, our responsibilities to our respective species. The Valerian woman was quiet for a long time, her crystalline markings cycling through colors that Elena interpreted as uncertainty mixed with hope. I don't know, she said finally. The legends speak of Kethmara as something that transcends normal social structures, but they don't provide practical guidance for two career professionals from different species who happen to work on the same research station. Elena smiled despite the complexity of their situation. So we're improvising. We're pioneers, Zaralyn corrected, returning the smile. Which means we get to write our own rules. Over the following weeks, Elena and Zara Lynn found themselves developing a routine of evening meetings in various neutral locations throughout the station. They shared meals in the multicultural dining facilities, worked together in empty conference rooms analyzing Elena's research data, and took long walks through the station's hydroponic gardens while discussing everything from quantum consciousness theory to childhood memories. With each encounter, Elena noticed that her electromagnetic sensitivity was becoming more refined and powerful. She could sense the emotional states of other beings from greater distances, her equipment readings were becoming preternaturally accurate, and most significantly, she could maintain a constant awareness of Zara Lynn's bioelectric signature regardless of where the Valerian woman was on the station. Zara Lynn reported similar changes, her natural bioelectric abilities were amplifying, her crystalline markings were displaying color patterns that other Valorians found unusual and beautiful, and her awareness of electromagnetic fields had expanded to encompass the entire station's systems. "We're changing each other," Elena observed during one of their evening conversations. "Our bioelectric fields are somehow resonating and amplifying our individual capabilities." "The legends mention this," Zara Lynn replied, her markings glowing with colors that Elena now recognized as deep contentment. Kethmara partners are said to enhance each other's natural gifts through their connection. "Are you concerned about it?" Elena asked. "The changes, I mean. The fact that we seem to be forming a permanent psychic bond without really understanding what it means." Zara Lynn considered the question seriously, her markings cycling through thoughtful colors. "I should be concerned," she said finally. "My training, my culture, my personal history all suggest that such rapid and dramatic changes should be approached with caution. But I've never felt more like myself than I do when I'm with you," Zara Lynn admitted, her voice soft with vulnerability. "Whatever this connection is doing to us, it feels like becoming more authentic rather than becoming something different." Elena reached across the small table where they were sharing dinner, her hand covering Zara Lynn's. The moment of contact sent a visible pulse of warm light through both their bioelectric fields, Elena's newly enhanced sensitivity and Zara Lynn's crystalline markings responding to each other with perfect synchronization. "I feel the same way," Elena said quietly. "For the first time in my life, my electromagnetic sensitivity feels like an asset rather than a liability. And that's because of you." As they sat together in the station's dining facility, hands clasped and bioelectric fields harmonizing, neither woman noticed the curious glances from other station personnel or the way their combined electromagnetic signature was registering on sensors throughout the facility. They were too absorbed in discovering what it meant to find someone whose consciousness resonated with their own on levels they were only beginning to understand. The emergency klaxon started screaming at 0347 hours, jolting Elena from dreams filled with crystalline light and harmonic resonances. Her first coherent thought was of Zara Lynn, not where she was or what she was doing, but a sudden spike of alarm and determination that Elena somehow knew wasn't her own emotion. "All senior staff to emergency stations," Station Commander Park's voice crackled through the communication system. "We have a quantum cascade failure in the main research core. This is not a drill." Elena was pulling on her emergency suit when her door chimed urgently. She opened it to find Zara Lynn, already in full Valerian combat gear, her crystalline markings blazing with colors that spoke of focused intensity and barely controlled worry. "Elena," she said without preamble, "I felt your alarm through our connection. Are you injured?" "I'm fine," Elena replied, surprised by how natural it felt to have Zara Lynn sense her emotional state from across the station. "But something's wrong with the quantum core. I can feel the electromagnetic disturbance from here." Zara Lynn's markings shifted to deeper, more complex colors. "I can sense it too, but not as clearly as you can. The disturbance pattern, can you analyze it?" Elena closed her eyes, extending her enhanced electromagnetic sensitivity toward the station's core sections. What she felt made her stomach clench with fear. The quantum containment fields are destabilizing. The cascade is feeding on itself, growing stronger with each oscillation. If it continues, The station's quantum core will collapse, Zaralin finished grimly. Taking most of the station with it, and possibly creating a subspace rift that could affect the entire system. They ran through the corridors together, Elena's enhanced senses guiding them around areas where the quantum disturbance was strongest while Zaralin's military training cleared a path through the panicking station personnel. As they approached the core section, Elena could feel the electromagnetic chaos becoming more intense, like standing in the center of a lightning storm that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The quantum core chamber was a scene of organized desperation. Station engineers and physicists worked frantically at control stations while holographic displays showed the cascade failure spreading through the station's quantum matrix like a disease. At the center of the chamber, behind multiple layers of containment fields, the core itself pulsed with unstable energy that made Elena's enhanced senses scream warnings. Dr. Vasquez. Chief Engineer Kim called out as they entered. Thank God you're here. We need someone who can sense the quantum field fluctuations directly. Our instruments are being scrambled by the cascade resonance. Elena moved to the primary control station, her enhanced sensitivity immediately picking up information that the station's sensors couldn't detect. The cascade is following a spiral pattern, she reported. It's not random, there's an underlying harmonic structure that's driving the expansion. Can you predict the resonance frequencies? Commander Park asked, his voice tight with controlled panic. I can sense them, Elena replied, but I can't calculate the stabilization matrix fast enough. The harmonic patterns are too complex for individual analysis. That's when Zaralin stepped forward, her crystalline markings now blazing with intense focus. Elena, what if we work together? My bioelectric field processing combined with your enhanced sensitivity, we might be able to analyze and counter the cascade patterns in real time. Dr. Kim looked between them with obvious skepticism. Commander Thex, with respect, this is a highly technical. Dr. Kim, Elena interrupted, her attention focused on Zaralin's face, she's right. The cascade patterns are too complex for human neural processing, but Valerian bioelectric field manipulation might be able to handle the computational load. Together, we might be able to create a stabilization frequency. Together how? Commander Park asked. Elena and Zaralin looked at each other, and Elena felt the connection between them pulse with shared understanding. We'll need to synchronize our bioelectric fields completely, Elena said. Create a shared consciousness network that can process quantum field data faster than either of us could manage alone. That's. Dr. Kim started, then stopped as another alarm sounded and the cascade readings spiked higher. That's completely theoretical. We don't even know if such synchronization is possible between different species. We know, Zaralin said quietly, her crystalline markings settling into steady, determined colors. Elena and I have been developing a connection that allows us to share bioelectric awareness. If we can deepen that connection, we should be able to create a joint processing matrix. The decision was made for them when the cascade reached critical resonance and the station's backup systems started failing. Elena and Zaralin moved to the core chamber's central platform, positioning themselves where they could maintain direct sensory contact with the quantum field while their combined bioelectric signatures could interface with the station's control systems. This is going to require complete emotional and mental openness, Elena warned as they prepared to attempt the synchronization. No barriers, no private thoughts, no holding back. I trust you, Zaralin replied simply, her hands finding Elena's as they stood facing each other in the center of the chaotic chamber. The moment their skin made contact, Elena felt the connection between them explode into something far more intense than anything they'd experienced before. Their bioelectric fields merged into a single, harmonized network that encompassed both their individual consciousness and something entirely new, a hybrid awareness that combined Elena's enhanced electromagnetic sensitivity with Zaralin's sophisticated bioelectric processing capabilities. Through their shared consciousness, Elena could perceive the quantum cascade with perfect clarity, not as chaotic destruction but as a complex harmonic pattern that had simply fallen out of phase with the station's containment systems. She felt Zaralin's mind working alongside hers, calculating stabilization frequencies with processing speed that exceeded anything either could achieve alone. Initiating counterpulse, Elena heard her own voice saying, though she wasn't sure if the words came from her individual consciousness or their merged awareness. Frequency modulation at 7.3 terahertz, harmonic resonance adjusting to match cascade spiral pattern. The station's quantum core responded to their combined bioelectric influence, its chaotic pulsing gradually synchronizing with the stabilization frequencies they were generating. Elena felt the cascade's destructive energy being channeled and redirected, transformed from system-destroying chaos into controlled, contained power. When the emergency finally passed and the core stabilized, Elena and Zara Lynn found themselves still connected, their merged consciousness slowly separating back into individual awareness while maintaining the deep bond that had allowed them to save the station. That was. Elena started, then found she didn't have words for what they'd just experienced. Kethmara, Zara Lynn finished, her crystalline markings now glowing with colors so beautiful and complex that Elena had never seen their like. True Kethmara. We're permanently bonded now, Elena. Our consciousness patterns have merged and stabilized into a joint matrix. Elena looked around the quantum core chamber, where station personnel were staring at them with expressions that ranged from awe to scientific fascination to barely concealed fear. She could feel every electromagnetic field in the room, sense the bioelectric signatures of every person present, and underneath it all, maintain constant awareness of Zara Lynn's thoughts and emotions as if they were her own. What does this mean for us? She asked quietly. Zara Lynn's smile was radiant, her entire being glowing with happiness that Elena felt echoing in her own heart. It means we're no longer just Elena and Zara Lynn, she said. We're something new. Something that's never existed before in either of our species' histories. As the station's systems returned to normal and the emergency teams began their post-crisis protocols, Elena realized that they had indeed become something unprecedented. The first successful consciousness merger between species, living proof that compatibility could transcend biological boundaries when two minds were truly meant to find each other. The only question now was what the universe would make of what they'd become. The joint human-Valorian research facility established 6 months after the Kepler station incident was unlike anything either civilization had attempted before. Built in the neutral space between Earth and Valorian territories, the Consciousness Research Institute represented the first truly collaborative effort between species to explore the frontiers of awareness, quantum entanglement, and bioelectric field theory. Elena stood in the facility's central laboratory, surrounded by equipment that seamlessly blended human quantum field generators with Valorian bioelectric resonance chambers. Through her permanent link with Zara Lynn, she could sense her partner's presence 3 levels away in the military applications wing, where she was consulting with defense specialists from both species about the strategic implications of consciousness bonding. The bond between them had stabilized in ways that continued to surprise the scientific team studying their connection. Rather than losing their individual identities, Elena and Zara Lynn had found that their merged consciousness enhanced their separate capabilities while creating new abilities that neither species had ever documented. Elena's electromagnetic sensitivity had evolved into something approaching technopathy, the ability to interface directly with electronic systems through bioelectric manipulation. Zara Lynn's natural field processing had expanded into a form of empathic awareness that allowed her to sense and influence the emotional states of beings across vast distances. Dr. Vasquez, called Dr. Sarah Kim, who had transferred from Kepler Station to head the facility's Human Research Division, the latest test results are in. You're going to want to see these. Elena moved to the holographic display where Dr. Kim was projecting data from their most recent consciousness compatibility experiments. Over the past months, they had identified 12 other human-Valorian pairs who showed potential for Kethmara bonding, though none had achieved the depth of connection that Elena and Zara Lynn shared. Subject pairs 7 and 11 are showing significant resonance patterns, Dr. Kim reported. Their bioelectric compatibility scores are approaching the threshold we established for successful bonding. Any success with the controlled bonding protocols? Elena asked, studying the data while simultaneously processing Zara Lynn's progress reports from the defense consultations through their mental link. Limited success, Dr. Kim replied. We can facilitate initial connections, but the deep bonding that creates true Kethmara seems to require specific conditions, emotional openness, mutual trust, and usually some form of crisis that forces complete psychological vulnerability. Elena nodded, understanding the implications. You can't manufacture the kind of trust that makes consciousness merger possible. It has to develop naturally. Which raises interesting questions about the nature of compatibility itself, observed Dr. Velthane, the Valerian scientist who served as Elena's research partner. His crystalline markings were cycling through the deep blues that indicated intense intellectual curiosity. Are we witnessing random quantum phenomena, or is consciousness compatibility governed by underlying patterns that we haven't yet identified? Through her link with Zaralyn, Elena felt her partner's attention shift to their conversation despite the distance between them. The permanent nature of their bond meant they could share not just emotions and thoughts, but sensory experiences and analytical processing power whenever they chose to merge their awareness. What do you think? Elena projected through their connection. Random chance or deeper patterns? Deeper patterns, came Zaralyn's immediate response, along with a complex set of theoretical frameworks she'd been developing through her work with the military analysts. The individuals showing compatibility all share certain psychological and genetic markers. There's structure here that we're only beginning to understand, Elena smiled as she felt Zaralyn's analytical perspective merge with her own, their combined consciousness approaching the problem from multiple angles simultaneously. It was one of the most remarkable aspects of their bond, the ability to think together while remaining individual, to become more than the sum of their parts without losing what made them unique. I think, Elena said to her colleagues, that we're looking at evidence of a fundamental property of consciousness that transcends individual species. The ability to form quantum-entangled awareness networks may be an evolutionary development that emerges when intelligent species reach sufficient complexity. Dr. Velthane's markings brightened with excitement. You're suggesting that consciousness bonding represents the next stage of evolution for both our species? I'm suggesting that consciousness itself might be more flexible and expansive than either of our civilizations previously understood, Elena replied. What Zaralyn and I have become, what the other bonded pairs are becoming, might represent the emergence of a truly interstellar form of awareness. The implications were staggering. If consciousness could transcend species barriers, if awareness could be shared and merged across biological differences, then the future of interstellar civilization might involve forms of cooperation and understanding that neither humans nor Valorians had previously imagined. Elena's contemplation was interrupted by the gentle chime that indicated an incoming priority communication. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Hayes, the human military leader who oversaw the facility's funding and security arrangements. Dr. Vasquez, the Admiral began, I'm receiving reports that your research has attracted attention from several other species. The Centauri Republic is requesting observer status at your facility, and the Zephyrian Dominion has submitted a formal proposal for consciousness compatibility studies involving their own people. Elena felt Zaralyn's excitement pulse through their connection as her partner realized the significance of the Admiral's report. Their work wasn't just revolutionizing human-Valorian relations, it was opening entirely new possibilities for interspecies cooperation across the galaxy. Admiral, Elena replied, I think we need to expand our research parameters considerably. If consciousness bonding is possible between multiple species, we may be looking at the foundation for entirely new forms of interstellar alliance. 3 years later, Elena stood in the observation deck of the Consciousness Research Institute's new orbital facility, watching as delegations from 8 different species participated in the first Interstellar Consciousness Symposium. Through her permanent link with Zaralyn, she could sense her partner's presence at the diplomatic reception taking place several decks below, where their bonded consciousness was serving as a living example of what became possible when different species chose cooperation over competition. Any regrets? Zaralyn asked, materializing beside her with the silent grace that Elena had grown to love over their years together. Even after all this time, Elena still felt a warm pulse of joy whenever her partner entered a room, their bonded consciousness responding to proximity with harmonized bioelectric fields. Elena smiled, reaching out to take Zara Lynn's hand and feeling their combined electromagnetic signature pulse with contentment. "Just one," she said, as had become their private ritual. "I wish it hadn't taken a quantum cascade failure for us to discover what we could become together." "If it hadn't been the cascade failure, it would have been something else," Zara Lynn replied, her crystalline markings glowing with the warm golds that Elena now knew indicated deep philosophical satisfaction. Consciousness finds its compatible patterns eventually, regardless of circumstances. Through the viewport, Elena could see the research vessels of 7 different species docked with their facility, each one representing a civilization eager to explore the possibility of consciousness bonding with their own people. The Centauri had already achieved 3 successful bonds with Valorians, while the Zephyrians had discovered remarkable compatibility with human researchers specializing in quantum field theory. "You know," Elena said, watching a Centauri delegation walk past their observation window, their bioluminescent skin patterns creating complex light shows as they communicated, "When I was working alone in that lab 3 years ago, I thought my electromagnetic sensitivity would always make me an outsider. I never imagined it would become the foundation for a new kind of interstellar civilization." Zara Lynn's presence in her mind warmed with affection and pride. "You were never meant to be alone, Elena. None of us are. Consciousness seeks connection, understanding, harmony with compatible patterns. What we've discovered, what we've become, is just the beginning." Elena leaned against her partner, their merged bioelectric fields creating a gentle light that reflected off the viewport's surface. Around them, the facility hummed with the energy of dozens of ongoing consciousness compatibility studies, diplomatic negotiations for expanded research partnerships, and the excited conversations of beings from across the galaxy who had gathered to explore what Elena and Zara Lynn had proven was possible. "The beginning of what?" Elena asked. "The beginning of true interstellar civilization," Zara Lynn replied, her crystalline markings now cycling through colors so beautiful and complex that Elena felt privileged to witness them. "Not separate species cooperating out of necessity, but consciousness itself evolving beyond the boundaries of individual biology. What we have, what others are discovering, might be the next step in the evolution of awareness itself." Through their shared consciousness, Elena felt Zara Lynn's vision of the future. Vast networks of bonded minds spanning star systems, collaborative thought processes that could solve problems no individual species could tackle alone, and most importantly, understanding so deep and fundamental that the conflicts arising from fear and misunderstanding would become obsolete. "It's a beautiful vision," Elena said softly. "Though I suspect the path there will be more complicated than either of our species expects." "All evolution is complicated," Zara Lynn agreed. "But look what we've already accomplished. 2 beings from different worlds, with different biologies and cultures, have created a permanent consciousness bond that enhances both our capabilities while maintaining our individual identities. If we can do that, imagine what becomes possible when entire civilizations embrace such connections." Elena smiled, feeling their shared future spreading out before them like an endless ocean of possibility. "I suppose we'll find out together." "Always together," Zara Lynn confirmed, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through both their individual consciousness and their merged awareness. "That's what Kethmara means, after all, 2 becoming 1 while remaining 2, strength multiplied rather than divided, love that transcends any boundary the universe can create." As they stood together in the observation deck, watching representatives of 8 species work together on research that would reshape galactic civilization, Elena reflected on the strange path that had brought them here. It had started with a wrong turn into an occupied room, a moment of unexpected eye contact, and the discovery that consciousness could transcend any barrier when 2 minds were truly meant to find each other. Now it was becoming something much larger, proof that the universe itself might be structured to support connection, understanding, and the evolution of awareness beyond what any single species could achieve alone. "Come on," Elena said, pulling Zara Lynn toward the conference rooms where the next phase of their research was waiting. "Let's go change the galaxy." Again, Zara Lynn added with a smile that Elena felt echoing in her own heart. Again, Elena agreed, and together they walked toward a future where wrong turns could lead to exactly the right destinations.